Thanks, and thanks to all of our contributors, the INOU, Social Justice Ireland and Age Action. And fair play to you for getting your head around all this detail, because quite honestly I find it mind-bending trying to cross-reference, you know, the report's recommendations and your responses and observations on them. But I broadly agree with a lot of the points that you are making. But just on the universal basic income, is everybody, I didn't hear all the introductions on the universal basic income, is everybody is in favour of it? No.
I think basically what we're in favour of it, but what we have been advocating for quite some time is that it needs to be studied properly and fairly. And what we're basically finding very serious fault with the Commission on Taxation and Welfare is that the work that was done there doesn't really merit the title of work. That it's basically a hopeless piece of underpinning that they have provided for their conclusion that it shouldn't be moved on, shouldn't be moved with.
This is on what the tax rate would have to be to fund it, is it?
That's one of the issues that they got completely wrong. They quoted this 76, I was doing this earlier on, they quoted this 76% or 75%. That comes out of an ESRI study back in 1994, which the ESRI itself reduced dramatically some years later, and which was subsequently rejected as too high by the Department of Finance. So, like, the question we have is, why did the Commission on Taxation not point out that the figure they put into the text, 65%, right? That's the figure they have in the text, and the only figure...
65.
65. That's the only figure they provide. But, like, that figure was disowned by the people who did the work by simply, they did another study and they came to a much lower figure, and then that figure itself was seen as too high by the Department of Finance. And we agree with the Department of Finance's conclusion on that. And that was the number that was carried in the Green Paper on basic income. The bottom line is there's been quite a number of other studies since on basic income. But like all we are asking for all of the time is that there be a fair assessment of basic income based on evidence and based on research, and not based on ideology or pub talk or whatever somebody got into their head someday when they had a pain. Because the bottom line in it is that the actual analysis contained in the report on the Commission on Taxation and Welfare, the analysis contained on basic income is a disgrace. A disgrace.
Okay, right, strong words. And did I hear you rightly say that you think the basic income should be based on the MESL, is it? Did I understand that correctly?
No, the basic income would depend on a lot of different things. We're not advocating that it be based on the MESL. We're basically advocating that it should be based on a number that's actually viable, so like economically, socially, whatever. It has to be viable, a viable number. I would agree. Ideally, it would be the MESL. What we'd have to look at in that context is whether the MESL, what the tax rates look like. But the bottom line in it is you could still have a universal basic income that would be something close. We've always kept close to the welfare line, wherever it is at any particular time, and that would make a substantial contribution right across the system. Okay. Now, remember always that when a basic income is proposed, there are other supports kept in place or other supports put in place. For example, disability payments, illness payments, all sorts of other payments for people. Those payments are not changed, are not removed with a basic income system. Okay.
Yeah. And what would you could you give me a figure? Like, I mean, we, in our budget, for what it's worth, I don't know if this corresponds to your idea, but I mean, in our pre-budget submission, we argued that as an absolute minimum, people should go above, I don't know if it was the MESL figure we used, but it was about 290. In fact, we rounded it up to say people should have a minimum 300 a week.
Yeah, and that, like, 290 is the MESL number. And
290 is the MESL number,
okay, and that is definitely the ideal. What that guarantees you, what MESL measures, And like, this is an issue that society needs to work on, basically.
Yeah.
Do we want everybody in the society to have enough to live life with dignity?
Yeah.
What is that number? That number for an individual is 290 a week, okay? The current welfare rate is 220 a week. Okay. Now, in an ideal context, we'd certainly see 290 as the basic rate, but we're not arguing for that because it may be something that has to be worked towards over a period. But what we are arguing within, and have been strongly arguing within the welfare discussion.
We're for going for it straight away, Sean.
Fair enough. But like what we were talking about within the welfare system, like, was to go for 220.
Yeah.
And there was a complete agreement across the community and voluntary sector on that particular number in the coming up to the budget decisions for this year. And like, the government did not match that. It basically only gave us 12. And in some ways, since then, we have been listening to a PR campaign that must be costing millions. So my tax money is going to pay what I consider to be a serious disinformation campaign that people, even poor people, are beginning to think that they should feel better off simply because they're coming across a whole load of ads.
Well, as somebody said to me, if you listen to the government ads, you'd think if you went to the community welfare office, you were going to get a holiday in Barbados. When in fact you can't even get an appointment.
I don't like to interrupt a bit of government bashing. However, a vote all has been called.